Hi guys, welcome back to Crime Time with Jess. Another day in the daybell trial. So we have 5 witnesses on the stand today, starting with Kay Woodcock. I'm not going to play a lot of what she said, just a few minutes, specifically about Lori looking up the wedding rings. She had access to Charles' account and saw that. I'll play that part for you guys. But much of it was very reminiscent of Lori's trial. So nothing, no new knowledge gained if you did watch Lori Vallow's trial. But as always, Kate did a great job on the stand. The next witness they had up was Angela Yancey. Now, Angela was a co-worker of Tammy's, and she worked with Tammy at the school district. She was in payroll and benefits. So we are going to listen to a little bit of her talk about Chad and the life insurance, because she is the one that's dealt with all of that. And then we also had Chad Daybell's mother, Sheila Daybell, take the stand. We are going to play some of her testimony as well. She was very shocked about Chad remarrying so soon. She talks about Lori telling her that her daughter just died. There was no mention of JJ, she said. So, and then the star witness, I feel, today was definitely Heather Daybell. I've talked about her in prior streams. If you guys don't know who she is, once again, she is Chad's sister-in-law. Okay, she's been a part of Chad's family, or in his family sphere, for 35 years. So she knows his family very well. Her husband, Matt, is Matt's brother. I don't know if I'm repeating myself at this point, but sorry. Aubrey just called me out and said that I was. So I probably was. But yes, her husband is Matt, and she just has a ton of insight into the Daybell family and all of that. And she's going to talk about several different things with the Daybell kids, with Tammy. Heather Daybell really went above and beyond. If there's a female version to this case, to Charles Vallow, it is Heather Daybell. Because Heather Daybell, this shirt just really wants to show the girls, okay? But Heather Daybell went above and beyond to try to warn people and warn her ward. If you guys don't know what a ward is in the LDS community, it's basically the little area that you live in. So your neighbors and stuff, it's kind of sectioned off, and that's your ward. So Heather Daybell held a high position, actually, in the LDS church. She was above all of the women in her ward and stakes. So she was above a lot of women. And she sent out messages to them and were telling them, that Chad was off the rails, basically. How else do you want to say this? And she was really upset. Her and her husband, Matt, were very upset that Chad and Tammy were moving to Rexburg, because she knew, in her own words, what Chad was bringing. She said, if they were just moving there to relocate, no big deal. But that's not why Chad was moving there. Chad had been telling all these crazy prophecies, and he was moving to Rexburg to do all this nonsense. And she didn't want it. So she really tried to warn everyone. They did not listen. And here we are. You have multiple people in this case that have raised red flags. I mean, majorly Charles Vallow. And Heather Daybell, again, she's another one that raised a lot of flags and was not afraid to speak about stuff. Hi, Grandma. I'm so glad you're here. But yes, so Heather's testimony was very important today. And I thought it was kind of funny at the end of it. Pryor was like, yeah, no, I'm not calling her back up. And then we also had Detective Stubbs. Now, Detective Stubbs was contacted by Arizona on November 1st. Okay, so this is after Tammy's already died. He is contacted by Arizona about Brandon Bujo. He did surveillance for them for the Jeep because if you guys remember, he was shot at. Brandon Bujo was shot at from the Jeep that used to belong to Charles. Once Charles was murdered, it was given to Tylee, and then Alex used it to go and try to shoot Brandon Bujo down. Ironically, I didn't know this, but Detective Stubbs, on November 1st, when he was called by Arizona to come in and do some surveillance, try to find that Jeep, he actually saw Chad and Lori. He seen them exit a residence. He followed the both of them to Idaho Falls, where they went to a Hobby Lobby. So they were there. They were there. And he said he saw them laughing and joking. He even took pictures of them in the parking lots. He said Lori was putting her head on Chad's shoulder. And there are pictures in court where you can see a blue shirt, and that was a picture of Chad. Now, they did find that Jeep. They found the Jeep on November 4th, the day before Chad and Lori got married. So yeah, but we're going to get to all of that stuff. So let me find my timestamp page, and we're going to go through it bit by bit. But again, I'm not here to stream the entire trial. I just want to kind of show the parts that are important. So first up is going to be Miss Woodcock, Miss Kay Woodcock, the biological grandmother of JJ Vallow. And we're going to go ahead and play her now.
November of 2019. Was JJ Vallow ever with you?
No.
We spoke earlier about Charles's online accounts. Did you have access to his business bank accounts?
Yes.
Did you have access to his emails?
Yes.
And did you have access to his passwords to look into those accounts?
Yes.
Was there ever a time in November of 2019 that you looked at Charles Vallow's Gmail account?
Yes. It was
When was that?
November the 8th.
Okay. And tell us about that. Why did you look at that account?
I was trying to hook up his printer to my computer, and I was having trouble with it the night before, so I left it alone. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning with a compulsion to go finish hooking up that computer to my computer to his printer. And anyway, long story short, I noticed his Gmail account was open on the screen, and it was a login page, and I had never really logged into his email before. And so I did I knew he had 3 favorite passwords. So the first password I used worked. And one of the emails that came up was from Amazon.
Yeah, well, let me stop you real quick. So
Okay.
just for clarity of the record, this was on November 8th of 2019.
Yes.
Did you see anything of interest to you in that Gmail account?
Yes, there was email from Amazon about a delivery.
All right. And did you look at that email?
Yes, I did. And I looked at the delivery address, and I've got it was a apartment on Pioneer Road in Rexburg, Idaho, with the apartment number
Do you recall the apartment number?
175.
Lori's apartment.
This email you looked at, you said it was from Amazon.
Mm.
Were you able to ascertain by looking at that email whose Amazon account was being used?
It was Charles's Amazon account.
And when you opened that email, were you able to look at Charles's Amazon account?
Yes. When I found that, I was in contact with, well, number one with Brandon, and then with our private investigator, and he walked me through how I could get into the Amazon browsing history. Well, first I could see what was purchased, and then I dug a little deeper into the Amazon browsing history.
All right. And was there anything of interest to you on that you saw with your own eyes on that Amazon browsing history?
Yes, it
What
was
did you see?
jaw dropping. I saw a search for malachite wedding rings. There was one purchased actually for $35 or $36.99. I saw searches for women's beach wedding dresses. I saw that she looked at or maybe purchased two, I don't remember, a yellow bikini, not a bikini, a yellow one-piece bathing suit. And another search was men's beach clothes, men's for like linen beach clothes, and a size large is what she was looking at. And it was a white shirt and white pants that like you would wear on a beach, linen type clothes.
Okay.
And that
Do you
search,
recall what date that search was performed?
that search was performed, I was just about to say that, October the 2nd of 2019. I read that November the 8th, but the search was actually done on October 2nd, 2019. And that was that was before Tammy's death.
All right.
That was 17 days actually before Tammy's murder.
Why did those items catch your attention?
Because I know that Tammy passed away October the 19th. And Lori was obviously involved with Chad Daybell. And it was just mind blowing that they were looking at wedding rings before
Judge, I'm gonna
Tammy's
object.
death.
Judge, I'm going to object. Calls for speculation.
Oh, of course he's going to object. Kay called it jaw-dropping and mind-blowing. And I could not agree with her more. So we're gonna end Kay's testimony there. Again, much of it was reminiscent of Lori Vallow's trial, and I'm gonna assume that you've watched Lori Vallow's trial if you're watching this. So we're gonna go to the second witness. Now, again, this is Angela Yancey. She worked with Tammy for 7 years, I believe, and she was in payroll and benefits, and she dealt with all of the insurance. So we're going to go to where she is 121. Okay.
All right, now that the witness is sworn, before we begin with examination, I'm going to inquire, because this trial has been live streamed as well as open to the public. Ms. Yancey, have you observed any of this trial since it started?
I have not.
All right, have you talked to anyone about their testimony they've provided at trial?
I have not.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, will you please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Angela, Angela, Yancey, Yancey.
And where do you live?
Idaho Falls.
Are you currently working?
Yes.
Where do you work?
I work for APG Aftermarket Products Group.
How long have you worked there?
4 years.
Where did you work prior to that?
Sugar Salem School District.
And what did you do for the school district?
I was in the payroll and benefits.
How long did you work in that capacity?
7 years.
Do you recall, were you working that job back in 2019?
I was.
Were you working the job in 2017?
I was.
I want to ask you to draw your attention back to that time frame. Do you remember working with an employee by the name of Tammy Daybell?
I do.
And can you describe for the jury how much interaction, if any, you ever had with Tammy?
I didn't have a whole lot. I was in the district office, and she was the librarian at Central Elementary.
Was that typical then, where you work in the district office? Did you not have frequent contact with the district employees?
Correct.
When would they have contact with you? What kinds of things?
Once a year, I would do a benefit meeting to explain the benefits, any changes, anything that they wanted to enroll in. And then I was always available if they had questions throughout the year.
When you mention benefits, what type of benefits are you referring to?
Medical, dental, vision, life insurance, AFLAC type policies.
Do you recall basically what type of life insurance benefits were offered?
Okay, so we're going to stop there. You get the idea of who she is and what she did at the Sugar school. It's Sugar City School or something like that. The name of it always makes me think of like Willy Wonka or something. I don't know. It's just such a name for a school, I guess. But so we're going to go to 138 timestamp, because this is where Angela is going to be talking about Tammy. If I can't. All right, we'll just start here.
To take with you to make a claim for life insurance? Once they got the death certificates, what do they need to do?
Then they submit all of the completed forms to me with the death certificate, and then I submit it. And after that, the insurance company will contact them directly.
Is a beneficiary statement one of the completed forms that's required?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I may publish state's proposed exhibit 152?
152?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In fact, it's thank you. It's an admitted exhibit. I misspoke.
We'll give you that exhibit then. Mr. Bailiff, we could please have exhibit 152 provided to State's Counsel.
Ma'am, what do you see on the screen in front of you?
That is the beneficiary statement that is part of the claim form.
And do you recognize that to be the same statement that Chad Daybell submitted?
I do.
I'd like to call your attention to the medical information, the second section of the form. Can you tell us what is that very first question in the left-hand box? Can you read that, please?
Underneath the attending physicians,
Right underneath the word medical information.
when did health of deceased first become impaired?
And what date is reflected in there?
October 18th, 2019.
And when do you recall?
Okay, so it asks on this form, when did the deceased become ill, basically? And he put down October 18th, literally the day before she died. How convenient, Chad. We're going to hear from Chad's mom, and we're going to hear Chad's mom say she was fine. But anyway, carrying on.
Call county passed? What date?
Between the 19th and the 20th.
And was this form anything that you filled out?
It is not.
Who fills this out typically?
The beneficiary does.
And
Chad.
would that have been Chad Daybell?
Yes,
Did you happen to observe him fill this out?
I did not.
Did he submit this to you?
Completed, yes,
Did he do that in person?
he did.
Mhm.
Your Honor, if I might next publish State's Exhibit 153.
You will.
Ma'am, I'd like to call your attention to the exhibit on the screen there. What is that?
This is the employer statement portion of the claim.
Can you explain what that is? What
It's
that means?
where the employer fills out the information concerning the employee.
And did you fill this form out?
I did.
Is that your signature?
That is the signature, yes.
Why is it necessary to fill this form out?
Since this is, it contains a group policy and a policy that is with, the premium is withheld through payroll. The employer is verifying that this is an employee of the district.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to publish State's 152A.
You may.
Ma'am, I'd like to call your attention to the exhibit in front of you. What is that?
That is a life insurance payout from LifeMap,
What is the amount on that payout?
$130,000.
And who is this payable to?
Chad Daybell,
And what is the date up on the claim payment?
November 8th, 2019.
So the claim was submitted back on or around the 30th of October.
Correct.
Is it typical that a life insurance claim is made that quickly?
It can be,
What about the payout? Does the payout come back quickly?
as long as there's no problems with the claim form, yes.
What do you have to do to avoid any problems with the claim form?
For the claim form to be submitted, all the questions answered, everything done accurately.
I have just a moment, Your Honor.
You may.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to help clarify something. You'd indicated that when Ms. Daybell first began employment, she had the group coverage of 50,000.
Correct,
And then I think you said she elected an additional 10,000 at that time.
correct,
So that would have been a total of 60,000.
correct.
And then she later elected the additional 80,000.
She increased the 10,000 up to 80,000.
Thank you. So that $130,000 is the total amount of the claim.
Correct.
And was that payable only to Chad? Were there any other beneficiaries at that time?
He was the primary beneficiary at 100%. So no, there was no other beneficiaries.
And just for clarity, what does that mean to be the primary at 100%?
You can, when you file or when you submit the beneficiary statement, you have the primary and a contingent or secondary. Primary beneficiary receives the life insurance in the event of a death. Secondary beneficiaries would receive it in the event that the primary passes away before or with the employee.
And I'd asked you a bit earlier about whether you are typically contacted that quickly after someone passes. I think you said no.
Correct.
Can you explain how often had you recalled anyone else ever filing and contacting you that quickly about a claim?
I don't really recall that. Most of the time I was searching them out to remind them that they had a life insurance policy that we needed to file for them.
And just to clarify, what does that mean most of the time you were searching them out? Explain that to the jury, please.
I'm not sure if, when employees elect, the coverage, if they share it with their family or their spouse or whoever, that they actually have that coverage. So when we are notified of a death of an employee, I will then, after a time period, I will search them out if they have not contacted me.
Any reason why you would have to be in a situation where you would have to search the family out to,
Judge, I'm going to object on the basis of relevance. I don't see where this line of questioning is going.
Sustained.
Sustained. Jesus.
was there anything else that was out of the norm from your perspective about the way the claim was requested?
Objection vague.
Overruled.
You may answer.
With my recollection, I just remember him coming in awfully quickly, and then and the amount of death certificates that he ordered, and then he did return to file the claim on the 25th as soon as he had the death certificates. I was out of town, so my coworkers told him I would be back on the 30th, and so when he was there first thing on the 30th, that just seemed odd to me that everything he just was very quickly and making sure that it was filed as soon as possible.
Your Honor, and I have no more questions at this time. I've got the exhibits here for the marshal.
Okay, so I don't have the timestamp for it, but she also testified that Tammy died, obviously, October 19th, which was a Saturday. And she said that Chad was in her office on October 21st, two days later. So Tammy's dead on Saturday. He's in her office on Monday morning with 8 death certificates. 8. And just like you just heard her say, she can't ever really recall, people being that quickly or even reaching out to her. It's usually her contacting them and saying, hey, you have this life insurance policy, So for him to be there 2 days later, ready to rock and roll with her death certificate, astounding. Just astounding. So we're going to move on to Miss Sheila Daybell, who is Chad's mother. She comes in at 2:31. We could start here because I'm looking at Chad being a whole potato. Loin fire himself. Huh.
All right, the state can call its next witness.
And Your Honor, the state calls Sheila Daybell.
Very, very rushed, Grandma. Very, very rushed. And everyone's noted this. I almost do want to do a compilation of how many people were shocked by how quickly he did all of this, because it's been said time and time again.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before the witness testifies here, I am going to inquire because this trial is the exclusionary order in effect for this witness?
And Your Honor, I believe that because she's the mother-in-law of one of the victims, that it doesn't apply to her. It's also our understanding that she did observe some of the trial on video, but my understanding is that because she's the mother-in-law of Tammy Daybell, that's okay and that she's able to view that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I'm not going to inquire then as it relates to the court's exclusionary order. So Ms. Beatty, you may go ahead and inquire on direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you please state your full name and then spell your last name?
Okay, Sheila Daybell, Daybell.
And do you prefer for me to call you Sheila or Mrs. Daybell?
Sheila's fine.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, are you married?
Yes.
Who's your husband?
Jack Daybell.
And do you and Jack Daybell have children together?
Yes.
Who are those children?
Chad, Paul, Matt, Brad, Becky.
And is Chad here in the courtroom today sitting over there?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know an individual named Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
And who was Tammy Daybell?
She's my daughter-in-law.
Did Tammy Daybell pass away in 2009?
Yes. 19.
In 2019, thank you. Do you recall the last time that you saw Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
When was that?
October 13th of 2019
Where were you when you saw Tammy?
at her home
And where is her home located?
in Sugar City, Idaho,
Okay. And where do you and Jack live?
Springville, Utah.
So you and Jack traveled to Idaho to see
Yes.
Tammy and Chad. What was the occasion?
Baby blessing.
And when you saw Tammy on October 13th of 2019, how did her health seem to you?
She was fine.
Okay. And did you receive a call from Chad Daybell on October 19th of 2019?
Yes.
What did Chad tell you in that phone call?
That Tammy had passed away.
What did you do when you got that phone call?
We immediately went to Idaho.
Did you go to Chad and Tammy's house?
Yes,
Did you see Chad there?
I did.
How would you describe his demeanor?
Upset.
Were Chad's children there as well?
Yes,
How would you describe their demeanor?
upset.
And did you attend a memorial service for Tammy Daybell?
Yes,
And where was that?
in Springville, Utah.
At some time, did you learn that Chad Daybell had moved out of the residence that he had shared with Tammy? Do
Yes,
you remember approximately when you learned that?
I don't remember a certain date.
Okay. Could you estimate approximately how many weeks after Tammy's death that happened?
Oh, maybe 2 to 3 weeks.
Were you surprised to find out that Chad had moved out of the residence?
Yeah,
I want to talk to you specifically about the middle of November of 2019. Did you and Jack travel to Idaho?
we did.
Did you meet with Chad at a Texas roadhouse
Yes,
in Idaho Falls?
yes.
Was it dinner time, lunchtime?
Dinner time.
Now you and Jack met Chad at the Texas roadhouse. Was somebody else there?
Yes.
Who was that?
Lori Vallow.
Had you ever met Lori Vallow before?
No,
During that dinner, did Chad tell you and Jack anything about his relationship with Lori Vallow?
I don't think he did as much as Lori did.
Okay. What did Lori tell you?
Well, she just, we noticed that they had these rings on, and my husband said, "Are you engaged?" And they said, "No, we're married."
Were you surprised?
Yeah.
Did they tell you when they had gotten married?
No,
Now, on November 13th of 2019, this was approximately a month after Tammy's death.
Mhm.
Is that why you were surprised?
yeah, I was.
Did Chad or Lori tell you anything about whether or not Lori had been married before?
Chad didn't.
Did Lori?
Yes.
What did Lori tell you?
Oh, that she'd been married before?
Yes.
Well, she just said that her husband had recently died,
Did she say how he had died?
heart attack.
When Lori said that her husband had died of a heart attack, what did Chad say, if anything?
I don't remember any specific mention.
Okay. And did Lori or Chad say anything about whether or not Lori had children?
She said she had a daughter that had died.
Do you remember how old that daughter was?
She didn't say a date.
Did she say anything about whether or not she had a young son?
No,
When Lori said that her daughter died, did Chad say anything that you recall?
I can't. No, I don't think.
At the end of that dinner, did you believe that Lori had a daughter who had died?
Yes.
Did Lori or Chad say anything about their financial situation during that dinner?
Nothing specific.
Did they make any reference to any money that they'd come into?
Nothing specific.
Did they reference their financial situation at all?
Just that they were okay.
Okay. Where were they living at the time?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know what state they were living in at the time?
At that dinner, I didn't know. I thought Idaho maybe.
Okay. And at some point, did you learn that they had moved to Hawaii?
Yes.
And after you learned, well, actually, I should ask you this. Do you remember approximately when you learned that they'd moved to Hawaii?
Sometime after that. I
Okay.
don't know when exactly.
Within a few weeks or months of that dinner?
a few weeks.
Few weeks. Did you talk on the phone with them from time to time while they were living in Hawaii?
Yes.
Did they ever mention Lori having children there with them?
No.
Okay. And I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you.
My mic is muted. Okay, so we're going to stop there with Chad's mom. But as just a recap, no mention of kids. Lori does tell her that her daughter just died. But as you can see, Chad just kind of sprung this on them. His mother testified that the last time that she saw Tammy Daybell was October 13th, which was 6 days before she was murdered. And they asked her, was there anything wrong with her? Nope. Everyone has said that. They noticed nothing wrong with her whatsoever. Okay. So now we're going to go into more serious testimony because this is going to be Heather Daybell. And again, I have talked about her a lot. Hidden True Crime has done a 2-part series interview with her before this trial ever happens. She was the first person to really come out from the Daybell family and speak some truth. So I'm not surprised to see her on the stand, but I'm happy to see her on the stand because many people were drinking Chad's Kool-Aid, okay? And she is one of the few that not only saw straight through him for who he was, She did not drink the Kool-Aid, and she pulled a Charles Vallow and attempted to steer people away from Chad and to help people not get caught up in his lunacy. She failed in that, obviously, but not for a lack of trying. So we are going to bring Heather Daybell up. I act like I'm the judge in this case or something, Let's bring Heather Daybell to the stand. But okay, so she starts at 251.19. Yep, went a little further. All right, we'll start it here. So Heather's testimony is compelling. There she is. I am a little concerned because she does say that something's wrong with her throat. And I hope she's in good health because Heather's a good woman. And she held a very high position in the court structure as far as the women
All right,
go.
this witness has been placed under oath. I'll ask again, maybe some direction here before I inquire, Mr. Wixom. Would this witness be?
I'm going to take a bathroom break. I'm going to be watching from my phone. And I'm going to let this play out because there's quite a bit that she says. So.
Subject to the court's exclusionary order. Could you use the microphone, Mr. Wixom?
Certainly, I'm sorry. Judge, we obviously will defer to the court, but she is the wife of Matt Daybell, who is a brother-in-law to Tammy Daybell. So an in-law, I think, is within the statute as a victim. I don't know how the court has ruled on an in-law of an in-law.
Yeah, I do actually want to have a quick sidebar just to map the issue out quickly before I make a snap decision here. So we'll take a quick recess while you wait just a moment.
Okay.
Aubrey, you guys are so loud. I really have to mute my mic.
All right, thanks, counsel. On the sidebar, we discussed the court's exclusionary order. There's a Idaho case called Shackelford that helps distinguish who that applies to and who doesn't, and the court determines it would not be applicable to this witness. So for that reason, I won't inquire. Thanks for the time, counsel, in working through that. So, Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, will you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Heather Daybell, HeatherDaybell.
Thank you. And ma'am, for the court and the jury's sake, you recently had some kind of an injury, is that correct?
I had a surgery. I had some artificial disc put in my cervical spine, so my throat's a little scratchy and my neck's in some pain, but
And my understanding is you might require some breaks during your testimony for that reason.
Yes.
So I might invite you, as you feel like you need a break, please alert the court, and then the court will decide if and when to take a break.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ma'am, you're related to Chad Daybell.
I am. He's my brother-in-law.
Okay. And who are you married to?
His younger brother, Matt.
And may I ask, how long have you been married?
We'll be married 30 years this winter, but we started dating 35 years ago.
Would it be safe to say then you've been acquainted with and known Chad for roughly 35 years?
He was actually on his mission when Matt and I started dating, but I was still in high school when he came home.
Oh, more than 30 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Was there ever a time since you've been married to Matt that you and Chad and Tammy had lived in the same town?
When Matt and I first got married, we lived in Springville where Chad and Tammy were for a short time.
About how long? The best you could recall.
Maybe that first year, I remember helping them move up to Ogden. I'm not exactly sure. It was early on in Matt and I's marriage.
And then was there any other time subsequent to that you and Chad lived in the same town?
Yes, when they moved to Rexburg in 2015.
So in between the time that they moved to Ogden and the time that they moved to Rexburg, how did you interact with them at family occasions and whatnot?
Yeah, when we'd get together, we'd talk with Tammy and Chad and their kids. Yeah.
Was that something that happened frequently, infrequently?
Probably several times a year. We'd get back to Springville, not a lot, but we would several times a year.
From your perspective, was it a normal amount of contact?
I would say so. Yeah.
I want to just stop now and ask, how would you describe the nature of your relationship with Chad?
In the beginning, when Matt and I first were married, it was normal as any in-law relationship would be. And then, like I said, we moved away. We didn't live close, but when we get together, we would talk mainly about his books. That seemed to be the topic most of the time of conversation, but I would say cordial and nothing out of the ordinary.
At any point, did the nature of your relationship with him change?
It did.
When
Yes.
did it change?
2014, when he started talking about end of times events and discussing a book that he had published for Julie Rowe.
We'll come back to that, but how did this relationship change at that point?
I was concerned about the things that he was telling the family and telling Matt and I. I was not comfortable with what he was informing us with.
Will you please elaborate to the jury what were the things that Chad was saying or teaching you that caused you the concerns?
He indicated that there would be an earthquake that would be happening in 2015, and he was kind of making us aware and preparing us for all of these end times events that were going to happen and cause a lot of destruction in Utah, in particular Salt Lake area.
Did he explain to you why he believed those events would occur?
Those were events that Julie Rowe had seen in a near-death experience, and so he had talked about those things with her as he published her book, and then he indicated he was seeing those things in vision as well.
So Chad is someone who had expressed to you and your family these visions that he'd had?
That he could see beyond the veil and see future events.
Were there other things that he explained to you that caused you concern, other teachings in addition to that?
At that point, it was mainly that. It was just these end of times events and when they would happen.
Later, were there other teachings or things that he would say to you or your family that caused you concern?
When he informed us he was thinking of moving his family to Rexburg in 2014, or 15, whenever that was, we actually had a conversation with him, asking him exactly what it was he thought was going to happen. And we had a pretty detailed conversation.
I'd like to pause you there. To the best you can recall, can you tell the jury when did that conversation occur?
That conversation was when they came out, Chad, Tammy, and some of their children came out to Rexburg to look for homes. And Matt and I sat with Chad in our home. That would have been summertime 2015.
And what happened in that conversation?
It was, excuse me, it was asking him point blank to give us the details of why he felt he needed to make this move. And he indicated that, and in particular, the houses that he was looking at were very close to our home. And we had some concerns with that. He told my husband and I that we would become great leaders in this gathering of people that would happen because of all the destruction in Utah, that our land where we lived would help in that, and that our home would become like a church or a temple. He was telling us those kinds of things. And that he felt like he needed to be in Rexburg with his family because the headquarters in Salt Lake of the church would end up having to move to Rexburg when all this destruction happened.
Did he ever explain to you whether he had seen or believed that he would have any kind of a significant role in this?
Mainly just that he would be helping in this gathering of people with their tents and everything, that he would be helping in that cause.
So based on what he was telling you, did he perceive his need to move to Rexburg to be something he could do to fulfill his role?
Yes, that he had a part to play in that. Mhm.
Did you believe these visions or teachings at the time that Chad was sharing?
No, I did not.
Then help the jury understand, why was that a concern to you? If you didn't believe them, why was it concerning?
Because he had let us know he was going to let people be knowing of this with Julie Rowe's book. And and trying to prepare people as all this destruction happened, that's why he was coming, and that he felt that we were going to be helping in that cause.
So further, if you don't believe them, why was there a concern that you had that he would be telling everybody about this?
Because in the belief system I had at that time in the LDS church, just some average person doesn't get information specific like that to share with others. In my belief at the time, we had a prophet of the church that would let us know if we needed to do anything to prepare for something like that. So in my understanding and how I had been taught, it wouldn't come through someone like Chad.
So let me ask you this way. If you didn't believe these things, why do you need to care about it if he's out teaching this stuff to people?
Because my opinion was that was incorrect, and that he was spreading that around to other church members. And that's, as I was taught, you don't do that.
Okay. So during this conversation that you were referring to in your home, did you ever confront Chad or tell him that you don't believe these things?
I did. I told him that I wasn't feeling good about what he was saying, and that I did. I was very blunt. I just flat out said, I don't believe what you're saying.
What was his reaction to you?
Chad doesn't show a lot of reaction, so it was just, okay, that was about it. He didn't argue or anything like that.
Did you express concerns about whether or not he should move near you?
Yes, Matt and I both did that. We decided years and years ago that we wanted to live apart from family. We do better that way as a couple, and had made a home for ourselves in Rexburg. We'd been in the area 15 years at that point. And we did express to him as he was looking at homes near us that if he needed to move to Rexburg, that was fine. Please just move somewhere not right in our neighborhood and not in our ward.
Why was it important to you that he not move in your neighborhood and ward?
Because I knew why he was coming, and I didn't want him trying to draw in people from my ward and having people associate his close proximity to us that we were involved or agreed with him.
Would it be fair to say, were there reputational concerns for you and your family?
We've built a business in Rexburg. We've made a good name for ourselves and didn't want there to be issues because of what Chad was coming with.
How did the conversation end?
We had gone and looked at homes. The conversation at that point, they said they didn't find a home that they liked. And so they just kind of put it all on pause, asked if they could store their stuff in a shed or something at our house in case they needed to quickly come to Rexburg. They'd have some supplies there. We told them they could do that. So when they left from that trip, we were under the impression that they wouldn't be moving soon.
Excuse me. So having explained all this at that point, how would you then describe your relationship with Chad at that point?
I was relieved at that point, so I kind of didn't worry about it because he indicated they wouldn't be coming. So, but to me, it felt, I don't know if I'd even say, well, it was strained. It was strained at that point. I was struggling.
How was it strained? Could you explain that?
Again, it was just my concerns with his trying to convince his family and others that these events were going to happen. And so as he wasn't going to let up on that he was quite certain. We asked him, is this happening? And he said, this is happening. And so,
may I interrupt you?
Mhm.
What do you mean by this is happening?
All of these events, the earthquake and everything, that those things were happening in 2015.
Did you later learn that he and Tammy did have immediate plans to move to Rexburg?
It was shortly after that. I can't remember for sure. It was about a week or two. We did get a phone call that they had put an offer on the home that they bought and that they were moving.
And approximately when did that happen?
That would be summer 2015. I can't remember exactly. It was July, August. I don't remember for sure.
When you found out about that, what was your reaction? What did you do?
I cried. I was very upset. Asked my husband to please talk him out of it, but the home was already in process of being bought at that point. So there wasn't anything that I could do about it.
And we'll come back to that for a moment. Can you please explain to the jury what at the time that Chad started having these visions and sharing them in 2014 or 15, what was your relationship like with Tammy?
About the same. We were cordial and friendly, and when we'd see each other at family events, we would visit, just normal.
Did that ever change?
Once they moved to Rexburg, because she knew we weren't happy about that move, we talked and things as they moved, and I tried to do a few things to help her. So I wouldn't say off the bat that it was strained with Tammy. That progressed as time went on.
And likewise, to go back on something you mentioned, I think you said Chad was teaching these things to his own family.
That's the understanding I had, yeah.
Did you ever get any sense of whether or not his wife and children were believing these things?
In a conversation I had with Chad and Tammy, it was Chad that indicated that he would come home with these visions and he'd say new things, and she'd kind of look at him and roll her eyes, but then she would go pray on it and get an answer that he was right. So especially concerning the move to Rexburg, she indicated that's how that went, is that he would come home with things, should be.
Sustained.
Did you get any of this information from Chad, or was it just from Tammy?
Well, the information of him receiving visions and bringing it to her and her kind of rolling her eyes, that was from Chad. He said that to me.
Did he explain that Tammy would ever change her mind?
I don't recall him saying she'd change her mind. I don't recall that.
Just based upon your interaction then, did you ever come to believe that Tammy was accepting of his visions?
I took it, yes, that she was. After some time, if it was something that seemed off to her, strange, she'd pray about it and then get a confirmation.
It's an objection, I suppose, based on hearsay, so that's sustained.
So ma'am, with respect to the children, did you ever have any, based on observations and interactions, not what they may have said, did you ever come to get a feel or believe whether or not they were accepting of their father's visions?
From my observation, yes, they all believed his visions.
Did that appear to be true with all the children?
Yes.
Was there ever a time that Chad tried to engage your children and explain these visions to them?
Yes, my second child, my oldest son, came to Matt and I. This would have been 2014-ish, maybe. Chad had approached him and told him that he would be a leader in this.
This is Mr. Wixom, response to that objection, please.
Judge, really, it's just going to state of mind, not to any truth of any visions, just simply how it was impacting her son, whether he believed these things. It's under 8033.
That's objection's overruled. On hearsay objection, it's overruled, so you can continue.
Thank you. You may answer.
So he just came to us. He was uncomfortable that Chad had approached him. And so in a later conversation, I did confront Chad on that and asked him not to approach my children.
How did Chad react to that confrontation?
Same way. Okay.
Was there ever a time that you had any confrontations with Chad in your backyard?
We had, once they had moved to Rexburg, so again, summer of 2015, shortly after that, I was concerned for Tammy and wanted to know how she was doing. So we asked Chad and Tammy to come over and have a visit with us. And he indicated that that would be fine, but to direct our questions or whatever we wanted to say at Chad and not at Tammy, because she would get upset at us if we directed anything at her.
Had you had any history prior to that with Tammy getting upset with you about anything?
No.
And to be clear, it was Chad who gave you this instruction?
Yes.
So in that conversation, did you follow Chad's instruction to only talk to him, or did you talk directly to Tammy?
I did not follow that instruction. Tammy was a grown woman, so I directed my questions at her.
Had you prior to that or since then, ever seen any other behavior that may have caused you concern between Chad and Tammy?
No, they seemed like a happy couple.
Before or since that, did Chad ever try to stop Tammy from talking or others from talking directly to her?
Not that I'm aware of.
So that was the only incident?
Mhm.
How did he react when you continued to address Tammy?
Pretty typical. He didn't react. We just had a conversation. He didn't seem upset or anything that I was talking directly to her.
What was the result of that conversation with Chad and Tammy?
My main intent for that conversation was to ask if Tammy was doing okay with the move, because I knew she was initially not wanting to move to Rexburg, and she again said she had prayed about it and felt like it was a good thing for their family. So said okay, and then talked a little bit further with Chad about his visions and things. And I again said I don't have any confirmation in myself that any of that's true or going to happen.
Did you get any indication from Chad's responses or reactions to you rejecting his beliefs? Did that affect him in any way that you could tell?
No, there's usually very little reaction. So it was just kind of nods and that was it.
So how long after that was it that they'd actually moved into your neighborhood?
To me, it seems like weeks. It was pretty recently after they moved. I don't remember exactly, summer of 2015.
How far away was their home from yours?
It's about a half a mile. You just go to the end of our street and turn onto Salem Highway, and they're about a half a mile down the street.
Can you see? Each other's homes from standing outside? Do you have that vantage point?
No, you'd have to go to the highway to see their house because there's a bend. So not directly from my house, but once you turn onto the highway, it's right there.
But if you wanted to walk, you're estimating half of a mile?
Mhm.
Is that a yes for the?
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Grandma. So I wanted to stop right there because, Heather Daybell has expressed in this testimony. I see, Grandma. Sorry again. But she has expressed in this testimony that, she really did not want him to move there because she knew what he was bringing, all of his crazy visions and nonsense. She also testified just now and said that, yes, his children did believe, all of them, in his visions and such. And another thing, and this is important because he tried to recruit her child. Yeah, so he actually attempted to, I think her son, his name is Colton, and the only reason I'm saying that is because she does say his name on Hidden True Crime, the interview she did, but I believe her son is named Colton, and Chad went to him and said, you're going to be a great warrior, and basically I want you on my team. He was trying to recruit him, but instead he went to his parents and was like, hey, crazy Uncle Chad's over here trying to recruit me, and they were not having any of that. So we'll resume.
The record.
Yes, I've actually timed that because I walk that road, so it's a half mile.
And once they actually moved there, did you have regular interaction? Did you ever go to the home?
I went, when they initially moved, I went once or twice. I took Tammy some bread. I called her, gave her some suggestions of doctors and dentists and things like that. I remember going to watch Emma speak in church. Leah had a homecoming thing. I tried to support their kids where I could. So I was in their home a few times initially.
Would it be safe to say that you were in their home enough that if I showed you some photographs that you'd be able to recognize those photographs of their home?
Yeah.
Your Honor, at this time, I have what is marked as the state's proposed exhibits 420D. They are not stipulated. I'd like to offer those and ask that they be handed to the witness. I've got 2 copies for the court and 1 for the defense, if I may.
I'll take a look at them. Thank you.
Lots of stops and starts in this case. I'm glued to this case. I hate the sidebars. John Pryor again, sidebar Sally, and the constant
Mr. John?
stops.
Thank you.
But
He hasn't moved to admit yet.
Thank you. Ma'am, may I ask you to please look at the first picture that you have in your hand in front of you?
Yes.
Briefly, can you just describe for the record what you're looking at?
This is the back of Chad's house. And I'm looking at in the forefront is an add-on to the original home that the kids would refer to as the cozy cone.
And may I ask, do you recognize that clearly as Chad's house?
Yes, I do.
If you were standing from the vantage point of that camera, would this accurately reflect a depiction of Chad's house?
Yes, it does.
Well, can I ask you to please turn to the next photograph? And please look at the back of the first one, and for the record, just note what the number is on the back, please.
Back of the first one, 420A.
Thank you. Now, as to the second photograph, why don't we start by referencing the number on the back of that, please?
This is 420B.
And on 420B, what do you see in that photograph?
Some musical instruments.
Where are the musical instruments at?
It appears to me up in.
Yeah, at this point, for just foundation, Mr. Rickson, we need to determine if these are coming in before we get testimony off of what they're showing.
Certainly. Ma'am, without referencing them, we just take a quick look at the other 2 photographs attached.
Okay.
Again, without going into what they are, do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, I do.
And have you seen the rooms depicted in those photographs?
Yes.
Have you been in them before?
Yes.
Do they accurately depict the inside of Chad's home?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we move to admit states 420A through D.
Any objection? All right, and please turn your microphone on, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Daybell, the first picture shows a musical set. Do you know whose musical set that is?
I can only assume. I don't know for sure.
okay, I'm going to stop here too, because Pryor loves to get up to that podium and just be the most arrogant SOB ever. But Heather Daybell is such a strong woman, and I have zero doubt that Chad has said a lot of crap about her to Pryor, and I would bet money that Pryor has watched her interview on Hidden True Crime. And to me, him not getting up and even walking over to the podium, him sitting there next to Chad, not even moving, is like basically devaluing her. Like, you're not even worth me getting up and walking over to this podium. I'm just going to sit here and interview you from here. Body language, matters. Okay. So, let me say this too about Heather Daybell. She goes on and she has a lot of testimony here. She was the longest person on the stand today, but she does talk about how she tried to reach out to the Daybell children. And I call them children, but again, they are all very much adults. They are not children. They're just Chad's children. But she tried to reach out to them as their aunt after their mother had died, and then charges were brought against Chad. And she tried to say to them, like, hey, I know these terrible things have happened, but I'm here for you. So she said immediately that they all just started hitting her with, what the hell? And she said right after that, she gets a phone call from Chad, and Chad tells her, Heather, you've been a problem in my life, like forever, basically, like basically telling her, leave my kids alone. Don't ask them nothing. Don't be there for them. I know I've been arrested. I know my wife's dead. I know I'm being charged with some crazy stuff, but just leave my kids alone. They don't need support. So it's just really wild that they are that close to him. And again, she said within minutes of texting them just to show support, Chad was calling her on the phone. So we're going to continue a little bit more of her testimony. I don't want to go through all of it because, again, it's super long and I'm not trying to stream this entire trial.
Sure.
So you've never seen that musical set in that room before, is that right?
I have seen musical instruments up in that room shortly after they moved in.
Okay, but did you see this musical set in that room? And did you actually see this picture?
I've never seen this picture until now.
Okay. Let's go to the next picture. Did you ever see that picture?
I have not seen this picture before.
Let's go to the third picture. Have you ever seen the third picture?
No, I haven't.
So what you are familiar with is you described it as an add-on. Is that correct?
Yes.
This isn't part of the structure. It's attached to the garage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop this and go on because prior doing his word salad as per usual, not really sure what this has to do with anything. Yes, there's an add-on to the house, most peculiar add-on I've ever seen. It sort of looks like a little white church. It's very detached from the house. There's like a walkway. They never attempted, Chad as a husband, he never attempted to kind of make the add-on look like it was part of the house. It's just very separate. But Garth was the oldest son. He was staying up in that room and had like his musical instruments and things like that. We're going to move on from Heather, and we are going to go to the last witness for today, which was Detective Stubbs. And we're going to, I think what he has to say was pretty significant. They went on a long break. They love to take their long lunch breaks. So Detective Stubbs is going to be at the end here. My laptop's trying to catch up. So let's see. I think we could probably start here. Yep.
All right, before we get started with testimony, let me just first inquire, is your title officer or detective or?
It was detective. I have since retired.
Okay, so I'll just refer to you as Officer Stubbs, even though retired. But Officer, this case has been live streamed as well as open to public access for the trial, and there's an exclusionary order by the court. I want to inquire, have you watched any of the trial proceedings since the case began?
I have not.
Okay, and have you discussed with anyone else their testimony in the trial that's been given?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. Mr. Wood, you can inquire.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name and spell it for the record?
First name David, last name Stubbs. Spelling of last is Stubbs.
And I think we just heard you say you've retired from law enforcement. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. About 3 months ago.
What's your current occupation?
I am a specialty mechanic.
Before you retired, what was your occupation in law enforcement?
I was a police detective, more so sergeant, which I was a supervisor in the detective division.
And how long had you been a supervisor in the detective division?
Boy, several years, 6-8 years.
Do you know how long you were a detective?
Since about 2010.
So were you post-certified?
Yes, I had post-certification.
After post-certification, did you continue to receive training in law enforcement?
Yes, see, numerous trainings were required by post to keep our training up to date as well each year.
As the supervisor of detectives, what was your role?
So my role as being a supervisor would have been keeping track of the other detectives' caseloads, assigning cases, time management for our division. Also, when required, assist other detectives in their casework, helping them out in whatever way I could.
Have you ever worked for a law enforcement agency other than the Rexburg Police?
Yes, did some time with Teton County Sheriff in Teton County. A small amount of time with the college police when they were a police force up there in Rexburg as well.
In total, do you know how many years you spent in law enforcement?
Total would have been in roughly 30 years.
In your training, have you been trained at all in working with cellular devices?
Yes, customarily in our department, there each detective will have a specialty area. I did work computer cell phone forensics and got special training in those areas.
And what did that entail? What type of work would you do with cellular devices?
Well, based on the way the world is going now, a lot of things we do with our daily lives involve cell phones, computers, the scheduling of things, emails, etc.
And so were you trained on any type of software for cell phone or computer extraction?
Yeah, I was Celebrite forensics, magnet forensics, access data forensics. Also attended multiple trainings in cellular location and things like that.
I'm sorry, did you say cellular location?
Yes.
Can you just briefly tell the jury what Cellbrite is?
So Celebrite is a forensic software that basically can dig deeper into a computer device other than the things you could maybe commonly see just on a computer itself. If you were to take a regular computer, there's things you wouldn't be able to see. A forensic software will look in more detail and look for things that may be hidden or deleted, and then process those and make understanding of those.
Mr. Wood, can we get a spelling on Cellbrite if it is there for the record?
Yes, and if I can ask the detective to spell it.
Celllebrite.
And you mentioned using Cellbrite or Celebrite with computers. Can you use that software with cell phones?
So Celebrite more, it can do computers. It can do, any kind of computer device, but it is more specialized in doing cellular devices and tablets, things like that.
Okay. Detective, were you involved in the investigation regarding J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan?
Yes, I was.
How did you come to be involved in that?
So my first involvement probably would have happened November 1st, 2019, where we were contacted by authorities in Arizona that were investigating a attempted shooting of a gentleman named Brandon Boudreau. They had requested that we, due to the information they had found, that we look for a gray Jeep with Texas license plates at 565 Pioneer Road because it was a vehicle of interest in that shooting. Therefore, we went and in that area, several officers from different agencies, Fremont, Rexburg, namely, to do surveillance and look for that Jeep for authorities in Arizona.
And did you personally take part in that surveillance?
Yes, I did.
When did you do that?
That would have been, like I said, on the 1st, and it was on and off throughout the day. We would kind of take, if you will, shifts with other officers, but throughout that entire day, we were looking for that Jeep at that location.
In doing that surveillance, did you ever have occasion to see Chad Daybell?
Yes,
What day was that?
that was on the same day, the 1st.
Okay. And where did you observe him?
I observed him and Lori Vallow exit the residence. They proceeded to get into a blue Subaru car with Arizona license plates. At that time, where we had not seen the Jeep yet, we decided that because they were people of interest in this investigation for the Jeep, we decided to follow that Jeep and see if they would, or sorry, that car, and see if they would lead us to where the Jeep might be located. So we followed the two of them.
Where did you follow them to?
Ultimately, we followed them to Idaho Falls, where they first made a stop at Mountain America Credit Union. They then proceeded through the parking lot, which was adjoining to Hobby Lobby, which is more of a craft type store there. there where they parked the vehicle and exited and headed toward the store.
And you say we, do you recall who you were with?
There was two Fremont officers, Thad Gardner and Joe Powell, that were also in a different vehicle, but in the same vicinity.
Right. And Your Honor, I apologize. I should have asked for this before the witness started. May I be handed State's Exhibits 36A and B?
Sorry, I've muted because if you guys see on my video that it's entitled "The Daybell Kids They Knew," I had two different people say, "Hey, I really want to watch this video, but your mouth breathing is like really bothering me," and they were right because I watched my own video because I do like to critique myself, and I sounded like Darth Vader. I was like. So the video's almost got 3,000 views, but you have a couple people complain. I can hear it myself. So I keep muting to try to avoid that. And I keep forgetting that I mute to try to avoid that. But what I was saying was, if you guys aren't familiar with Hobby Lobby, I have worked there. The town that I live in right now is where the man that created Hobby Lobby is from. The Hobby Lobby legacy store, meaning like the first store, is here in this town that I live in. Very, very Christian based. You'll find beautiful home decor. Most of my house is, it's an apartment now, but most of my apartment is all Hobby Lobby. Aubrey's whole room is Hobby Lobby. But you know, a lot of nice home decor, and then a lot of Christian-based stuff, crosses, things of that nature. So if you're unfamiliar with Hobby Lobby, there you go, with a little history and a little, thing about what they're about.
Yeah, we'll get those to you, Mr. Bailiff, please, and Madam Clerk.
You guys don't want to hear that the whole time I'm on here, okay? And let's skip past this. These people take breaks like no other.
Observe them go anywhere else?
So at this point, after they entered the store, I left the area, and the other two officers stayed there to observe when they came out. So this was the last time I observed them that day.
Were you involved in any other surveillance on Lori Vallow? Or was that it?
As far as surveillance goes, that was the only time I was under surveillance with them.
And you stated, correct me if I'm wrong, the purpose for this was looking for a specific Jeep.
That is correct.
Are you aware if that Jeep was found?
So not that day, but it was discovered a few days later on the 4th of that same month, outside that same residence we were observing.
Now, he says the residence. I knew a long time ago that Lori gave the Jeep to Colby. So I don't know if that's where the Jeep was. Alex Cox was still alive at this time, but Tylee was not still alive. And after Tylee died, Lori gave that Jeep to Colby. So I don't know if he's not really saying, but it was found on November 4th, and he says at that residence. November 4th is the day before Chad and Lori get married that the Jeep is found. But again, it had to be found with Colby because that's who she gave it to. So, carry on.
At that point, what next involvement did you have in the investigation regarding J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan?
The next time that I would have had contact would have been that same month, but on the 26th of that month, 2019.
And that month is November, correct?
That is correct.
What happened on November 26, 2019?
So we had gotten a request to do a welfare check on one of Lori's children, JJ Vallow, at the request of his grandmother, Kay Woodcock. She had not heard from him in some time and had requested law enforcement go and check on his well-being. Therefore, on the 26th, other officers and myself went to that 565 Pioneer Road, number 175, to attempt to make contact with her.
And what was your specific involvement that day?
So my involvement, whereas I discussed before, as a supervisor helping other officers out in my division, they had requested that we come over and try and help them.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You say they. Who was they?
That would have been Detective Hermosillo and Detective Hope.
And then you said we. Who was we?
Myself and Detective or Lieutenant Ball proceeded over there to help them try and locate the child.
Do you recall approximately what time you went over to 525 Pioneer Drive?
It would have been, I believe, the late afternoon.
What did you do when you got there?
When we got there, myself and Lieutenant Ball approached apartment 175, where we were told Lori was living, and knocked on the door to try and make contact to see if she could tell us where her son was and his condition.
And were you able to make contact with Lori Vallow?
Yes.
How did that conversation go?
We knocked on the door. She answered. We told her that we were there inquiring about her son, JJ, and his well-being, that there was some concern that the grandmother had not heard from him in quite some time. And she invited us in to discuss the matter.
All right. Were you wearing a body cam on that day?
I was.
Did you record that conversation with her?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibit 59. And a courtesy copy has been provided to the court and counsel.
Thank you.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit 59?
I do.
What is it?
It is a flash drive with the content on it would be my body cam from that first visit that day with Lori Vallow at her residence.
And have you reviewed that specific flash drive today?
Yes, I have reviewed this flash drive.
Did you initial that flash drive?
I did.
Did you do that upon review of it?
After viewing, yes, I initialed it.
And you stated that it contains your body cam from November 26, 2019, correct?
That is correct.
And is it a true and accurate representation of the recording your body cam made?
Yes,
And is it a true and accurate representation of what you recall that day?
it is.
Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibit 59 be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
There would be no objection from the defense, Judge.
All right, Exhibit 59 is admitted.
So, Detective, you stated that you went into Miss Daybell's apartment, or Miss Vallow, Lori Vallow's apartment.
Yes.
And what did you talk with her about?
We advised her that the reason we were there was of concern of Kay Woodcock, that she had not heard from her grandson and that we were there just to make sure he was okay with a welfare check.
And did Lori tell you where JJ was?
She advised us at that time that JJ was not there and that he was currently in Arizona staying with her friend Melanie Gibb.
Was there anyone else in the apartment with her?
So upon entering the apartment, we asked if anybody else was in the apartment, and she advised that her brother, Alex Cox, was there.
Did you have occasion to speak with her at all about Chad Daybell?
Yes, we asked her if she knew.
Okay, so I'm not sure why that's cut off at the moment. They must be. Sidebar. Gloria Dellen is going to come up, so the link in the chat is for her, and we're just gonna recap this day and just sort of bounce our stuff and all the things we know about this case for you guys. But I have no idea. Okay, let's see.
Chad Daybell, to which she said Chad was her brother's friend.
Liar.
Your Honor, I would ask for permission to publicize State's Exhibit 59.
You can publish 59.
I know this is exactly what you wanted to do, Glory. Rewatch the trial. Because we didn't do that already once today, right?
Well, today was good.
Yeah, today was good.
Yeah, but somehow I always get
Detective, do you recognize this as your
kind
body
of
cam that you were
drained by
testifying
the
to?
end of the day.
Yes, is my body cam. I had it on my left shoulder.
We're going to end after this body cam footage is shown.
Okay. I'll mute my mic for
Hear
this
any volume to
effective.
this.
Chew on my pizza.
Okay. I muted you.
Your Honor, we have a technical issue. The volume on the computer is up and on the player.
Is this at a stage where there's audio yet on the file?
Maybe continue until maybe.
So we're gonna see Detective Stubb, I believe Lieutenant Ball, Detective Horacio, I think was called in. But they're all gonna go right up in Lori's apartment.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
Just waiting.
We're gonna have to do it. Please.
All right, thanks
Your
for
Honor, I can put the microphone up to the computer.
Go ahead.
So this is them walking up.
Her car's out there too. Bring back the blue. Blue Subaru. Hi. Lori, Lieutenant Ball, Police Department. How are you? You got me? You alone or you got help?
My brother's here.
So
I'm gonna have to stop just for a second. I love that she said, "Oh, my brother's here." No mention of the husband. Then she tries to play it off. Oh yeah, Chad Daybell. He's an author. You forgot to mention that he's also your husband. But carry on.
we're here.
Oh, this is a big mess. I just talked to the guy on the phone.
And what do you ask you?
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on JJ.
So JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh, right. Yeah, no bad. No, you want? No. Come here. Mikey comes in.
Oh,
So
sorry.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son has autism. Her name's Melanie Kid. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little
What is it?
concerned
Why?
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking and they got a bad vibe that like something was going on here because nobody knew anything about a child. They weren't talking.
It's because a lot of stuff that's gone on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So
Well, that's why we're concerned because it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that was here. Obviously, he's kind of my protector. My other brother that was in with my husband who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance policy.
No.
So
If you're confused in listening to this, she is calling Alex her protector, and then her older brother Adam, who was very sympathetic to Charles and was Charles's friend and was texting with him up until the morning that he was murdered. So she's trying to say that her older brother Adam was trying to kill her. He was not. Okay, these people are delusional.
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back into school there because I tried putting him in school here, public school, Kennedy.
Okay.
He went for 2 months. We tried it, but he had such a hard time. Now, the person who called is my sister-in-law, but she's his natural grandmother. He's adopted by us. Okay, so her son, who's a drug addict, had a baby with a girl who's a drug addict, and they took him from, CPS took him, gave him to the grandmother. She came by him, and then she wanted us to adopt him, which we did. And we loved him. My husband and I, who
You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, listening to her say this BS, I really probably should have played Kay's entire freaking testimony because Kay talked about her and Larry having JJ up until 8, 9, 10 months old, that it was a difficult decision. Charles wanted to adopt him, and they didn't really want to, but then they came around to it, and they did. So for her to sit here and lie and say, oh, she wanted us to adopt him. That is not true. That is not true.
Died earlier this year. He passed away. Since he passed away, she's been trying to fight me for him and being really horrible to me and that kind of stuff. She's kind of a paternal friend.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense.
That's what I, the paternal grandmother.
And he has autism and ADHD. He doesn't really talk to people. Like he's very special needs. So I have him in a special needs school there. She was trying to. So what happened was, my husband, who we were married for 15 years and had raised all these 5 kids together, switched his life insurance policy to her, right? To his sister, who got $1 million when he died. And we got nothing. For me to raise JJ, all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing. She got $1 million. So I knew she was going to try to sue me for him, or yeah, because she now has this $1 million. She can hire people to help him, and I have nothing.
But you have legal custody.
He's my son. I adopted him when he was 2 years. We had him from the time he was 8 months old till 2 years old. So she does nothing and wants to cause me trouble. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I'm a good person. Raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life. But everyone is causing me trouble right now. So
we don't want to cause a lot of trouble. How long have you been here?
We only been here since September. Okay. We moved up here in September. My daughter goes to BYUI.
Your daughter goes to BYUI?
Yeah.
Does she live here?
So it's been a nightmare, but.
Lori Vallow, I raised all my children. No, you didn't, ma'am. You murdered your 2 minor children. There's only one child that actually made it to adulthood for you. She does. You're right, Glory. She cannot tell the truth about anything. But I guess when you're trying to murder your entire family to run off with someone that resembles a giant spud potato, you gotta tell some lies.
I'm gonna go back to Arizona so I can put him back in the special needs school. He couldn't do the school here. It was too hard for him. He would scream and cry, take him to school. The principal would have to come out, try to drag him out of the car. Like, it just was too hard. But I just don't tell people where I am. I don't tell her where I am ever. And she doesn't have any legal rights to anything. Like, she's been horrible to me since my husband died.
I understand she never called you to try to get the child, hey, I'm interested in the child back, but
I know, but she sends me these emails with like the date and like she's putting up court stuff, like she's documenting. I haven't heard from him in all this time, and so I told her that she's fine. But
See, we haven't heard any of that as far as.
I'm just saying she's doing this as part of that. Is my understanding.
And our only concern in this whole thing is the child.
I got it.
And so that's where we're at on that. And then
so
we were just a little weirded out when. And I understand now that we've heard your side of the story.
It's awful. I feel like I'm being tracked all the time. Like, why are police coming to my car? What did I do?
They said they were visiting 2 guys. And I was like, what's your brother?
Yeah.
Who was the other one? The other guy they were visiting with. There were 2. Well, we had 2 detectives over here trying to.
Looking for you a little while ago.
Oh, because I was at the store.
And they ran into.
Hey, Lori.
My brother and his friend, probably.
Oh,
he's been moving. Chad
from Ramsey. What's his last name? Yeah, okay.
All right. So it's just a mess, but just constantly causing me trouble.
Chad Daybell.
He really threw her off there. She really thought that she was just going to say, oh, it was my brother and my brother's friend. I think his name's Chad. She just married him, days before she married him. So these guys, one of them, and I believe that it is Detective Stubbs, one of his family members is married to one of Chad's family members. And I think we'll talk about after this testimony because I can't remember exactly how they're related, but they are related. So he's aware. And he's kind of playing it off. Like, hey, didn't his wife just die? He knows that Tammy just died. Okay. I think Lori's a little freaked out in this moment. Like, what? How do you know that?
Out there.
Doesn't he live out in the? He's not Chad Daybell. His wife passed away recently. Is that him?
I don't know.
But yeah, Chad Daybell.
But it sounds familiar as often.
I think I know one of these. He's got a couple of daughters.
He has lots of kids.
Okay. All right. What? You need anything else? Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
We don't mean to be
I'm
involved.
sorry that people are constantly knocking on me. People are looking for me and I just don't want to be found. So.
Have you had problems? I think we only had.
The reason I'm moving is that the brother that was going to kill me, that was on emails and texts with my husband at the time, he was showing up here, so he found out where I was, and he was knocking on my door.
No, this was your brother? He showed up here and was knocking on your door.
He lives in Kansas.
And you said something about you were getting threatening emails?
Well, no, just after my husband passed, I found emails and texts between them that they were planning all this stuff to get rid of me.
Do you worry about him coming over?
Well, that's when I'm moving back. I moved in, and I'm not going to be in a place. I'm going to live with my friend, Melanie. Don't tell anybody her name, Gibb, because I don't want anything in my name. I put the apartment in my name. But I'm staying over here with my brother because he protects me.
Okay.
I should have me, so.
So back up, you know, you can call, take care of
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just, like, it's just a nightmare. I mean, I canceled the insurance policy because my husband passed, so there's no money. It's ridiculous. And what are they going to do with JJ? Like, what do people think?
Yeah.
So,
Well, if you have a problem, she'll back up, feel free to call us. We'll come and let them off or something. Okay. All right. Okay. Good night. Thank you. See ya.
Not
So we're gonna end it there. But I'm gonna unmute you, Glory. It's,
I just finished up the pizza, so
good.
I overcooked it, I'm afraid. Oh well.
I
Yeah,
think that's overcooked.
I had a hard time staying awake during that last segment of the trial. Yeah, I was just like, oh come on, I want to go. I want to take a nap already, and I'd heat up the oven for the pizza, and then I fell asleep afterwards, and so it was on for 2 hours.
I didn't get to watch it because I went and picked up my daughter and then went grocery shopping. So I had to catch up on Detective Stubbs afterwards because this trial is very long. And there are a lot of sidebars, there's a lot of breaks, there's a lot of that. But just from today's testimony, who do you think the most impactful witness was and why?
Well, probably Heather, because I mean, the mom just wasn't on that long, so she didn't really have much to say other than Chad said some things, like, oh, she lost her daughter. Yeah, we've heard that already. But
I thought it was. I thought the moment when she said, when he asked, were you surprised, and she said yes. For his mother to say that, I thought that mattered. But Heather, yeah, I agree with you. I think she was a star witness today for sure. And could you tell how much she got under Pryor's skin that he wouldn't even get up from that table and go to the podium and,
I didn't notice that. The software for doing streaming reduces the size of everything, and so once you quarter the screen, you don't really see that much. And so I miss a lot on
yeah.
when Chad was doing his fake tears.
Huh.
I completely missed that because he's just this little block, in one quarter of the screen, and something that subtle is just kind of lost.
I definitely noticed that Pryor would not get up and go to the podium and treat her as a witness. He stayed seated at that table and talked to her from the table. And I was saying it earlier that I think it was a way to devalue her. Disrespectful. You're not even worth me getting up. I'm going to sit right here and talk to you. I'm not getting up to go to the podium. But, I think there's good reason for that because you heard Heather Daybell's testimony. And if you guys want to watch the whole thing, you can go to East Idaho News and they have, the entire trial. But I'm not streaming the trial every day. Glorindellen does. Just in case you guys don't know. So she does stream it every day. I just kind of like to take things that I find compelling or interesting or whatever and go over that and talk about that. So, and I also thought, there's just this common theme among these witnesses of just the shock of Chad getting remarried and his rush to bury Tammy. And I think we heard the other day from a witness that it was just so unusual. Mrs. Gilbert, Alice Gilbert, it's just so unusual because Gloria, you can speak a lot more on the LDS faith than I can, but it's just not customary to have a funeral within 2 to 3 days because there's a lot of people to contact.
Yeah, big families and so forth, and one in less than a week is really unusual. One of my school chums, her husband dropped dead while going out for a jog, and I think that was a week. And
I don't even know if that's LDS faith because same thing for my father. I mean,
the only faith I know where it's common is the Islam. I remember when Princess Diana was killed, they had Dodi's funeral like before sunset, because that's just how their culture is. And
but remember Mrs. Gilbert talking about, there needed to be people to be notified to do the food. And, it seemed to be quite an event. And it's just person after person. I really, again, I need to do a compilation of how many people are like, when that prosecution asked them, were you surprised or were you shocked? Yes. Because his own mother said that. Heather Daybell said that. Alice Gilbert said that. I believe Tammy's cousin. Everyone around them knew this is not normal. There's something wrong. And what, if this happened to you, and whoever these people are to you, aunt, uncle, cousin, friend, neighbor, whatever, you don't want to necessarily start grilling them like, hey, why are you burying your wife in 2 days? You don't want to do that because you don't know how people grieve and, how they may go about things or something like that. And so I think these people all observed it and quietly thought to themselves.
Yeah. People don't want to say, express their concerns and so forth because they don't want to offend or set off an emotional jag, and people in these situations exploit that.
Right. Right. So I just, and then Angela Yancey, if you want to speak on her for a second. And
I'm trying to remember which one she was.
She was
the insurance person from the school district. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, she testified that he was in the Monday following the death. The death was Friday, and there he is Monday trying to get the insurance, and the funeral's on Tuesday.
Right. I talked about that earlier. I mean, just how quick. That's 2 days. So he must have got up Monday morning, went straight to get her death certificate, and went straight to the office. I mean, as she testified and said, usually it's people are not coming to her. Usually she's having to call them and say, hey, there was a life insurance policy, or reminding them of this. Not Chad. He showed up on Monday morning with 8 death certificates. But I do think, and I didn't play that part, but Pryor kind of said, he did give an explanation as to why Chad would have so many of them. To me, it's just the time. It's the time. He wasted no time at all. And the way that he introduced Lori to family and friends is just so, I could just imagine these people staring at her and feeling shocked and looking at him like, wait, what? You're getting married, or you're already married? I mean, because he originally told his parents that he thought he found another woman that he was going to marry. But when they showed up to that, that's when he actually told them, well, yeah, we're not gonna get married. We actually already did. So I think even his mom, when they asked him, well, where was he living? She's like, I don't know. And if you think about Lori Vallow's trial with her sister, Summer Shiflett, calling her, or talking to her in jail over the jailhouse phone call, her screaming at her and saying, you cut us off. You cut us off. And I feel like Chad did the same to his extended family. Not necessarily his kids, because they're followers of his beliefs, I think, to a large extent or a certain extent. But, his own parents didn't even know that he was married or where he was living. And again, I continually go back to Emma Daybell. Like, I used to have a laser focus on Melanie Gibb because I was so bothered. I know this woman is complicit in guilty knowledge at the very minimum. But Emma Daybell bothers me to no end because I feel like she's one and the same. She followed these beliefs, and I do. I feel like she has some sort of guilty knowledge or something.
I'm not sure about before the fact, but definitely I think she does after the fact.
And, if it was after the fact, Glory, she moved into her mom and dad's house right after Chad was arrested and the kids were dug up. And then I think it was somebody in your chat that was saying that, she was out in the backyard, like right around where Tylee was buried, like running around with her little toddler. It's just really sickening. Like, what is wrong with you? They just don't, just like Chad, they just don't seem to have any empathy. And it's just like all of the, people came out to Chad's property and were putting all of the balloons and little things for the children after they were found and stuff like that. I believe that it was Emma and Garth that went and ripped it all down.
Yeah, so the neighbors, one of the neighbors welcomed them putting it on their property. So it's right there, not technically on the property, as close as you can get to it.
But how do you do that? How do you just...
Somebody else who did something like that. You have... back to my favorite, Susan Powell's missing, and Josh Powell and his dad are ripping down the posters that her parents are putting up around town to increase awareness.
Doesn't that say something to you? I mean, I guess it could be argued that the Daybell kids didn't want to see that and have it be a reminder of maybe what their father did. But we all know that that's not the case because they think he was framed. So if you think he was framed, you don't even think that he did any of this. So why would you not keep those memorials up for the children? All the people that showed up, why would you not keep them up? It's just a question. I feel like Emma Daybell, I've had my sights on her for a long time, actually. When she initially, years ago, when them photographers were pulling up and she was sticking her tongue out at them like a child, that's when I really was like, yeah, what is wrong with this woman? How old are you?
She's a
and you're a
narcissist.
teacher?
I mean, who else can we think of who sticks out their tongue? Meghan Markle. What is Meghan Markle known for? She's a narcissist. Chad's a narcissist.
You had to throw that in there. You had to throw that in there. That's so funny. Yeah, so, but again, oh wait, there was one other thing because I took a lot of notes. I mean, these are my notes just from today. I don't know if you can, oh, you can't see them. Oh, if I bring them closer to me, maybe you can see it. Yeah, but that's only 2 pages of them because it goes on. There were other things. Let me just see. And if you have anything to say it, Lori.
Mhm.
I'm just looking through my notes and making sure. Oh, Heather Daybell talking about Chad not even wanting to wait for his own brothers to come to Tammy's funeral. And she said that he played a really odd song, and I have not listened to the song yet, but apparently it's called Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's a chipper song that, you know, let's come on, let's get to work. Let's, you know, yeah, it's not in a minor tone. It's you know, fast tempo. You know, not what you have for. I mean, and he's talking about her being lazy at the funeral, and
Yes.
a song about working. Well, she was the one working. He was the one at home who was had his hobby career as a writer.
Yeah, she was the main breadwinner for the majority of their marriage. So for him to, I seen somebody say, narcissists just can't help it. You know, even at a funeral, he's got to say, well, you know, she was actually lazy.
Well, and it's a case
And,
of projection. He's
yeah.
projecting his foibles onto her. You know, she's lazy. No, he's lazy.
Very. And I find it just ridiculous that they want to talk about Tammy's weight and whether or not she was fit when you have fat ass Chad, the toad.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
I mean, really?
And there was a previous witness. I think it was when they were talking about Tammy going to the classes and how she couldn't keep up and so forth. And somebody I was listening to doing commentaries was talking about how disgusted they were because John Pryor is fat shaming Tammy and so forth. And here he is again, you know.
Yep, for sure. I think the one misstep that Heather Daybell made in her testimony was when she offered up that she had been called a pot stirrer. And as soon as she said it, it was an unsolicited, you know, answer. And as soon as she said it, I knew Pryor was going to go in on that. And so he, you know, even Judge Boyce seemed interested in the definition of a pot stirrer because he even sustained or overruled an objection by the state when Pryor was asking her, well, what is a pot stirrer? What's that mean? And she said when her and her husband would approach Jack Daybell, which is Chad's father, and try to tell him, you know, these visions, these things that he's doing are not good, that Jack Daybell would tell them, you know, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And then Heather Daybell said that while they were in person, her husband, and her father-in-law, Jack Daybell, that he called her a pot stirrer to her face. But, you know, when somebody's exhibiting this really wild behavior and they're trying bravely to bring it up to the family, like, hey, do you guys see what's going on? You know, and then you have them saying, oh, just leave it alone. Don't, you know.
Sadly, I think it's a case of, you know, misogyny. Whatever the man says goes, and you know, you're the female, and you're, you know, you're not letting it ride. Be like in what's his face, the FLDS guy, Warren Jeffs, you know, the things that they'd say to the polygamous women, you know, stay sweet or something like that. You know, you're supposed to be sweet and shut up and not have any opinions.
Keep sweet.
Keep sweet, yes. And so, that's kind of how I felt is, whoa, you're not doing your job as a little woman being subservient to the man.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. And this is why, I was saying to you, I was really encouraging you to watch the Heather Daybell interviews on Hidden True Crime, because she goes into a lot more detail between the relationship with Jack Daybell and Sheila Daybell, and it's very much like that. And that's how she described it. And she did say they're very good people, but the dynamic of the relationship was very much Jack ran the family.
Mm-hmm.
And Sheila was always kind of devalued, even by her own sons. Chad,
That's what they were
mainly.
taught by example.
Well, she, I think she was very good for Matt, and Matt was very good for her, because she grew up in an all-female home. And so when she met Matt when she was 14 or 15 years old, you 14, 15-year-old girls are very sassy. I know I was very sassy at that age. So, she said that she told him, oh, no. That's not how we do it around here, basically,
Yeah.
And so she sort of changed him in that way that's not really acceptable. The way that your dad kind of runs your mom this way, that's not really cool, and that's not how I want my marriage to be. Matt, by all accounts, I everything I've heard about him, he's turned out to be a pretty great guy, husband, father, and I think Heather touched on this in her interviews with Hidden True Crime, and I am going to link them in the comments, both 2 parts, because it's 2 parts. But I really want people to watch that, because the things she said on the stand were right along with what she said in those. But again, just a lot more detail, a lot more context. And I feel like you get a much better picture of how the Daybell family works. But she's very much pointed out that Chad was the son that did not show any respect to his mother. He wasn't necessarily disrespectful towards her, but more just indifferent and just off put by anything about her, really. He just didn't have a lot of interest.
I think that goes back to the misogyny that, treating them with indifference is respect.
Yeah.
Treating them overtly negatively, that's not respect. So anything that is not disrespect is obviously respect. So
yeah, I'm actually happy with Chad's mom's testimony today, because I think she tried to be as honest as she could. I do wonder if some of the things she said, Lori said, Chad actually said. I don't know, but I do feel like she was mostly truthful. I mean, she was truthful in being surprised that he was married. She was truthful in all of that kind of thing.
Well, who wouldn't be? I mean,
right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of sitting in court under oath. You kind of have to be. But it's just, yeah, I thought her testimony, it was brief, but I thought it was good and effective, because it doesn't get any more bigger than someone's mother coming onto the stand. And she didn't necessarily, throw him under the bus or anything. She was just honest. And her, testimony matched a lot of what other people have said as well.
Now, I can't remember, did they say that he was reserving the right to call her as a defense witness, or
Sheila?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't believe so, but don't lock me in with that because I don't
Mhm.
know. I just know for sure that prior Judge Boyce asked him, you know, are you to be recalling this witness, Heather Daybell? No, 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 we're done with her. Get her out of
Mhm.
here. You know, so I thought that was pretty funny. I don't think he wants any more parts of Heather
No.
Daybell. She knows too much. She also has a power of her own.
Well, you'd say she knows where the bodies are buried, but that would be too appropriate in this case.
Yeah, it really would be. But you know, I mean, just her high ranking in the church and all of that. And if you want to know about that, again, she really talks a lot about that in those interviews that she did. She talks about how they kind of pushed her, like you are going to be the stake president, or I don't know the exact wording for it. You would,
Yeah,
but
well, yeah, they kind of push people into something that they wouldn't necessarily feel prepared for as a kind of a thing for them to grow into.
well, it's a huge responsibility, and it's not. There's no pay.
No.
You know, you're being called to do that, and it is a huge responsibility. I mean, she wrote that letter. She talked with the higher ups. They wanted her to send that letter out about Chad. I want to see that damn letter. They never did read that letter, did they?
No, not only a snippet.
I hope that she releases it. I really do, because I would love to hear what she has to say, or what she had to say.
Mhm.
So I think
Well,
we've
I think it goes back to we heard in some testimony the other day they were talking about um, Julie Rowe telling or warning Chad that the stake president wants her to stop publishing the books and that his stake president wants to talk to him. Well, that's the beginning of the excommunication process. Is what's
ah
going on there, and for the bishop to be addressing the or stake president to be addressing one of the people, obviously they've got some concerns, and this is also early stages of the excommunication process because he's on the disciplinary radar is what's going on because of the teachings, and this is obviously before they knew what he was doing in his private life.
well, I think his involvement too with Julie Rowe, and I don't look for her to be called for a witness, but it would be very interesting if she was. But his involvement with Julie Rowe goes very far back, and Heather Daybell talked about that in this testimony, that she felt sorry for Tammy because Julie Rowe had came out, and Julie and Chad are walking together towards this river, and he's just sort of leaving his wife and kids behind. They're
But
behind them. He's ignoring them, and he's all about Julie Rowe. And
well,
she
it's
talked
pretty
about,
obviously that they were having an affair.
yes.
And that interview that listened to during the breaks today, um, apparently Julie Rowe she's the only woman who's had multiple husbands in the past. So it's okay for everybody to be having an affair because, hey, we were married in a previous life. It's the ultimate pickup line for religious types,
Well, that's interesting. I am so sorry. But that's interesting because it seems like Chad really likes the ones that have like multiple marriages. He's like, "Hey, can I slide up in there? You've had five marriages, Lori. Can I be your sixth, or can I be your fifth, or
Mhm.
Julie Rowe too?" I mean, these are women that are not afraid of marriage. That's for darn sure. So I feel like that was right up his alley. And then I also, at the end, Detective Stubbs, when he was in there with Lori Vallow, and she said, "Oh yeah, he's got lots of kids. Like, he's got a whole bunch of kids." She had no living children except for Colby in that moment because they murdered 2 of them. But yeah, Chad's got a lot of kids. And I just wonder, again, with Emma Daybell or any of the Daybell kids, like, how? Make this make sense to me. And I know I was saying this to you, and I know I said it in a live stream before, but it just makes no sense. If Emma Daybell is still communicating with Lori, and she is saying that her father was framed, Lori has been convicted of these murders. So who framed your father? Lori, that you're still communicating with, or was it all Alex? Because again, Lori has been convicted. It's a done deal. You know, she is a murderer. She is, period. So it just, with her saying that her dad is framed and her still communicating with Lori, it does not make sense.
No.
You can't make it make sense. What does make sense is that Emma knows the truth and wants to not say that. And I still feel like putting her on the stand is going to be a nightmare. If Pryor does it, I don't believe her testimony is going to be believed at all. And I do think that Lindsay Blake is going to, for lack of a better term, die a slow death by 1,000 cuts.
It looks pretty obvious that Emma is being set up as Chad's cheerleader and chief excuser, an apologist,
enabler.
Yeah, enabler. And she's not really going to have credibility, in my opinion, with the jury, because they're going, really, your dad runs off and marries this other woman on short notice, and you're fine with it, and her kids turn up in your dad's garden, and you're saying that
he was framed.
He's framed, and and we heard in the other trial that there was only a 15-minute window of opportunity that Alex was there. He couldn't have dug the graves, put people in and buried them over in that short a time frame. Somebody already had the grave dug.
They had to, because I think, what was the exact time that Alex pinged in that backyard? I want to say it was 12 minutes, or was it 15?
The 15 is what sticks out with me.
Okay.
And so,
but even so, nobody's thinking a grave.
It's 180 seconds difference.
Yeah, it's whether it's 12 or 15, nobody's digging a grave that fast. And again, I thought it was interesting. Seth Daybell, one of Chad's sons, said, he's a grave digger. Like, basically he knew what he was doing. Okay, yes, but he had a wife that was still alive in the house, and Garth living in the house. I think he probably did the best he could with digging these graves, but they're not going to be perfect. You only have so much time.
Yeah, and he doesn't have the backhoe and the professional equipment.
Right. But, I still think, I don't think it was Alex's idea to put a board over top of JJ with stones and all of that, because, like, I think there's been testimony about it that Chad, obviously as a grave digger, would understand that if you dig a grave, you got to top fill it or it's going to sink down.
Yeah.
And he did that. That
was
done.
And I had a friend who she had grandparents or great grandparents buried out in a quasi ghost town named Eureka. It was an old mining town, which is largely, left empty, and so we would go there to clean the family mausoleum, because her great-grandmother did not want to be buried underground. And so they built this mausoleum and encased the coffins in glass. Well, there's a problem with that, and that is moisture. And so the encased coffins in glass ended up being in concrete. And so I thought, well, that's rather mafiosi, if you ask me.
That is, yeah.
I remember wandering around that cemetery and seeing graves from the last, the 1800s, and you could literally see down where the wood had collapsed and water had washed and you could see down into the grave.
Wow.
And
kind of creepy.
It was something straight out of a Stephen King novel.
Oh, speaking of Stephen King, and I guess we can end this live stream because we just went over 2 hours. But speaking of Stephen King, I'm on everybody to watch that darn Baby Reindeer on Netflix.
Oh, is that what that is? I've seen that mentioned a few places and wondered what it was. So.
Oh my God, Glory. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. It don't have a darn thing to do with baby reindeers. That sounds all cute and cuddly. Every episode, you're going to be looking around. What in the F am I watching? This is insane. But I will tell you that the main actor, his name is Richard Gadd. He wrote this, but it's a true story. It's his life. It's what happened to him. So not only did he write it and live it, he stars as himself in this. And the real life, he is a stalker. I'm not going to ruin it for everybody, but he is a stalker. This real life stalker has actually been found in real life. The internet is undefeated. They went out searching for her. They found her. So it's a really wild, wild story. But Stephen King said he had 2 words when he watched Baby Reindeer. Holy F. So, if you get a reaction from Stephen King like that, yeah, definitely watch it and binge it tonight. In fact, when I started watching it, just the first minute or 2 in, I'm like, what? So, but anyway, I think we can end here.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to go too far over. It's been 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I will see you in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we have, because they should be building up to the stronger, more emotionally impactful stuff as things progress into the case. And we had family members today, so what's next? Yesterday we had the medical examiner, so we probably will be having the medical examiners for the autopsies of JJ and Tylee at some point here.
Not to sound callous or cold or anything like that, I might skip that only because of Lori's trial. I kind of, we've seen most of the things about Lori or Tylee and JJ, but Tammy is really my focus with this case, because
Tammy is the focus on this one, but they do have to address it because it is 2 counts of murder that they can't say, oh, well, they didn't present evidence enough, and so we're letting them off on those charges. They can't do that. So,
yeah, I just don't know if I'm personally going to sit through that, just because I feel like I already have.
Well,
but it'll be interesting.
I'm finding that having the visual, even though you can't see much, from the size of the squares, it's just more impactful being able to see the courtroom in general. It helps me focus, whereas when we didn't, it was just mind wandering off and ho hum.
We got those drawings, those awful sketches.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got that stuff, but she was convicted nonetheless. But it's still, I understand what you're saying. Even though I really don't like the Zoom format that they do, I wish I could zoom in more to Chad. There's things that I want to kind of see his reaction to, and
Yeah.
you can't always see it so clearly. But I have noticed with Chad, because I do watch him a lot, is that when he's unbothered, he really just kind of sits there and he's just kind of, he doesn't really have much of a reaction. But you can tell when there's someone or some part of a testimony that bothers him, because he does start fidgeting. He starts fidgeting. He'll start moving around. He's got a paper going. He's doing stuff. He's writing. He just really gets very, very fidgety. Yeah.
One thing that was interesting, I was watching Nancy Grace from earlier today, and they were talking to one of the jurors from Lori's trial who was there in the courtroom every day, and he was saying, yeah, they're showing the autopsy pictures of the kids or something, or that he's or maybe it was, I can't remember. Anyways, autopsy photos, and he's sitting there with his computer flipping through them like he's shopping on Amazon or something like that, and then suddenly they're having it discussed in the trial, and it's boo-hoo, and here's some Kleenexes and so forth. And
I'm telling you, we've seen Chad cry listening to his own voice.
He's not at all bothered by it when nobody's paying attention, or so he thinks. But when
he heard his own 911 call and started crying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, it's something that they said that when after Tammy died, he would be fine, and then somebody coming to visit would start crying, and he'd start crying, and he's a very poor reflex machine. He's doing copying what they do. It's something that sociopaths do, but he's not a very good one. And
because they can't genuinely feel those emotions, so they have to mimic others, because they don't know what it is to truly feel empathy or sympathy or hurt or sad. So they look at others. Oh, is that what they're doing? They're crying. Okay, I should cry right now.
Yeah. So he heard himself cry. That's somebody crying, so I better cry. And so it's just a Pavlov dog response. I should show some emotion here because some emotion is being exhibited. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I guess we'll end it here, Glory, and then I will see you at 9:30 tomorrow morning for the. Do you have any predictions of who we're going to see on the stand tomorrow in particular?
Maybe some more police after the current detective, and then maybe we'll go into some more people from the neighborhood.
Do you think that Emma Daybell will definitely testify?
Yeah, they've set her up. Yeah, they've set her up for the chief defense apologist.
Now, I don't want to see the prosecution rip her to shreds, because this is never a good look when any attorney does that to any witness. But I do want them to take her down slice by slice by slice by slice.
Well, it just shows how their testimony is unreliable. Like, Pryor made the stupid assertion that there aren't any stairs in the house, implying the witness didn't know what they're talking about. And so therefore, you can't believe anything this witness had to say, because they obviously don't know this house is a single-story house. Well, so they keep proving every time a witness has any knowledge. Oh yeah, there's a section in the back. it's got 2 sections and there are stairs. And so they keep driving that home every time. So, it's, you
Yeah.
can't rely on what Pryor says because he lies. He misrepresents things.
He likes to tell half truths and partial truths and get people to admit things that they're not really trying to admit or agree with him. Not admit, agree with him about. And I agree with you earlier when you said that, he's just, when you ask a question the way he does, like, hey, Glorindellen, you live in Utah, right? Right? Is that correct? Right? Right?
Mhm.
And it's just kind of like, yeah, I do live in Utah. Can you calm down? But sidebar Sally. I mean, he can't help himself. But
Mhm.
we'll see him tomorrow, unfortunately. So
Mhm. Okay.
I will see you later. Thanks,
Okay.
guys. Thanks,
Okay.
Lori.
Bye-bye.
Bye.